Hi, I'm Chris Yukins. I'm a professor at George Washington University Law School. I'm a professor in the Government Procurement Law program, and thank you for joining us for the last session in our webinar series on open contracting around the globe. This has been a really extraordinary opportunity to learn about how open contracting is unfolding. We started in Asia, we went to the Americas in the second session, and now we'll be talking about Europe and Africa. This has been a very productive set of webinars on an important emerging issue of open contracting. It really affects procurement systems around the world. Every single government, every single procuring entity will be dealing with this issue of open contracting over coming years. So we're very privileged at GW to have been able to co-host this set of webinars with the Open Contracting Partnership. George Neumann, who is going to coordinating this with us, has done a fantastic job putting it together. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to George. Again, welcome.
Thank you so much, Chris, and welcome everyone to this last session of the webinar series. As Chris mentioned, we've been traveling the globe, really starting over in Asia, moving over to Latin America, and now we're hearing, and we're looking forward to hearing from our experts and practitioners in Africa and Europe about the latest and best practices of open contracting and how we can use public procurement into a data-driven, user-friendly, and digital public service that, delivers results and impact for people and the planet. We will share how to turn translation into action, legislation into action, engage stakeholders across government, business, and civil society to collaborate on reforms and ensure procurement data is actionable by making it machine-readable and fully publicly available, and present tools and approaches that drive systemic change. In this special edition, we also have a dedicated section on how the European Union can drive change and support countries in Europe in making sure that their data is more actionable and useful to improve public procurement at a critical time. We are incredibly honored to be joined by the panel. So we have Edwin Musa, our head of Africa, who will give an introduction into open contracting and the approaches. We are joined by Lindsay McGuire, who is joining us from the UK to discuss the procurement reforms that have been implemented. Then we will move over to Doreen Kiasimulema, who's joining us from Uganda to talk about how they have been increasing inclusion in public procurement and engaging with citizens in monitoring public procurement. Kęstutis Kasulis from Lithuania has decades of experience in both buying and advising public procurement agencies, and he'll share with us how Lithuania has been increasing and integrating green procurement in its country systems. And then we will be joined by our colleagues from the University of Turin, Gabriela Racca, and from the TED office, Luca Martinelli, who will discuss procurement in the European Union. But let's get started. Edwin, I will hand it over to you. Edwin, can you tell us briefly what is open contracting and how does open contracting help us reimagine public procurement so it better serves people and protects our planet?
Thank you very much, Georg. Before we get into even what open contracting is to just remember the significance of public procurement. Since we're talking about Africa here, in most of these countries, it accounts for about 60% to 70% of the national budget. So it's the one instrument that is used to translate policies and budgets into actual services. If this was needed previously, urgent because of the reduced resources as a result of changes in international development. And that's how the issue of open contracting comes in, because public procurement, whereas it can be prone to a lot of corruption, a lot of inefficiencies, it's also a tool that can be leveraged to promote wider policy outcomes, including sustainable development, inclusive development, where you are talking about women-owned businesses, small and medium enterprises, and that. And for that to happen, you need or open contracting as one of the tools that you can apply. At the heart of it, open contracting is a set of principles and processes that support effective service delivery and access to economic opportunity through open data and stakeholder engagement. It's about disclosing information and making it accessible so that governments can collaborate with citizens, businesses, private organizations to address challenges across the entire contracting cycle to improve service delivery. It's a tested approach, as we will hear from a number of our panelists later on, that is used to imagine how public procurement can deliver systematic change. And there are about 3 or 4 core things that it applies. One, it's that it has to be data-driven, because if you lack data, it's very hard to know where you're going, as they've already said. Then it has to be results focused, that you must have an identifiable end goal on why you're doing what you're doing, defined and also usually agreed upon by the different stakeholders. Then it has to be collaborative. We envisage public procurement that brings together different stakeholders. The public procurement function is one that has quite a number of stakeholders within and outside government. And so open contracting enables that to make it collaborative, so that the interests of government, the private sector, civil society, and the citizens, who are the beneficiaries of the services, involved in a public procurement. Then for this to happen, for it to be data-driven, results-focused, and collaborative, we think it should be digitized. It's possible to do it without digitization, but it's harder. And so we've been also driving the whole digitization agenda. And again, we shall hear a bit of that later on. So it's about supporting more fair, sustainable, and inclusive communities by making government procurement processes more transparent and working across the public, private, and non-government sectors. So where you have value for money, but also trying to create value for many, as we have said previously. Some of the key things that the open contracting helps do is it transforms the government contracting process from secrecy to publishing open and accessible, timely contracting data. We all know that the ills of public financial management are exacerbated when there's secrecy. So the more you publish and open up, the more you reduce some of those ills. The other is that, as I've said, engages citizens, businesses, and governments to identify collectively and fix problems that can be identified at any different stages. And it has already demonstrated substantial results in a number of countries that have applied it, as those that attended the previous webinars had from Asia, Latin America, and we'll also hear a bit from Africa today and Europe. There's growing momentum for it in Africa, even through broader processes like the Open Government Partnership. It's one of the most common commitments in the action plans by governments and states across Africa. We've seen that in Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and Tunisia, where open contracting and publication of procurement information is one of the key commitments that these countries have. The World Bank is also increasingly using it as one of the disbursement linked indicators for disbursement of the funds. We've seen that in Uganda, we've seen that in Tanzania of recent, and Malawi. And so it's a norm that's being accepted at a very strategic level. So the open contracting connects a better value for money, where there's fairness for accessing information on market opportunities by the businesses. So when it's open, there's better competition because you have easy access to procurement information. I'll give an example. In most countries, there's a call for open competition as the default method of procurement. However, even where that is the aspiration, there are few tenders where you have many competitors because the information is not very easily accessible, particularly in Africa where newspaper circulation is not that wide. So automation and open contracting enables wider competition because there's easy access to opportunities. It's also enables detection of corruption through things like the red flag systems that have been very efficient in places like the Republic. We are working around that for Tanzania and Rwanda right now to have e-procurement, but also a red flag system on the e-procurement system because that provides an early warning tool that can allow you to not be reactive after things have gone wrong, but rather responsive to any challenges that occur during the procurement process. One of the biggest tools that have been applied in order to promote the open contracting is the open contracting data standard. And this is a global non-proprietary standard structure to reflect the complete contracting cycle from planning to contract management. Public procurement is one of the biggest government data sources for obvious reasons, because it has many participants, it has different stages. The challenge has always been that information in most countries' organizations is scattered. And for you to then bring this information and organize it to create a coherent story, we then came up with this open contracting data standard that is on many platforms. It can be on portals, procurement portals, on e-government procurement systems. And that enables you to users to publish shareable, reusable, machine-readable data that joins data sets from different parts of the procurement process at planning, the tendering process, at award, contract award, and implementation. As I conclude, open contracting and data become valuable only if you have a reasonable purpose for which you're collecting that data. It's not an end in itself. It has to have higher goals for decision making. And I've talked about some like competition, public integrity, where you have accountability through the red flag system, but also being able to track some key reforms that are being implemented by the government. For example, if you're putting around sustainable procurement or inclusive procurement, how is that working and how best can it be improved? Then lastly, of course, I think you'll hear this a lot more from Uganda. It provides an opportunity for civic engagement where the citizens can use this data to be able to monitor public contracts. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Edwin. And I think you've highlighted some key connectors as we go into the next case studies. And I think one of the things is that we've seen is how complete, for example, some of the countries that have recently implemented open contracting forms have been able to make their public procurement coverage. So it's not just something that is only in sort of like at the federal level. In Tanzania, for example, they've created an app and have been able to make sure that all of the communities are publishing procurement data and are using and are digitizing sort of like the procurement process via the phones as they do. But I want us to turn first to the United Kingdom and hear how they have been really translating legislation into action. So I want to turn to Lindsay McGuire, Deputy Director for Procurement Reform at the Cabinet Office. Lindsay, UK's 2023 Procurement Act has been a major rehaul of public procurement in the UK, and particularly from a data perspective. Obviously, there are a lot of other elements as well, but it unifies all of the country's information on one central digital platform. You've been building this. Could you take us behind the scenes and share with us what has this entailed, all the hard work, structuring new notices, adding identifiers, bringing all the information together, and kind of like the purpose behind the reform. And I'll be happy to share the slides so that for your comments. One moment.
Great, thank you. Yes, thanks so much. And hello, everyone. Thanks so much for the invite. I'm a proper, I would say, open and transparent contracting geek, if that's allowed to be said. So this series has been brilliant. I have learned so much. And I really want to continue building that and also share some of the best practice that we've looked at in the UK, and also give a few reflections on what's worked, what has been particularly challenging, but also, you know, what the future looks like, because we are starting on quite a long-term journey. If you just skip on to maybe, the next one. I won't go through this in detail, but essentially in the UK, we spend about £350 billion. That's about a third of all of our expenditure. We are a sort of a decentralized public sector. So we have a core central government spend. So things like Ministry of Defence, health, prisons, infrastructure, exactly. For example, all of that is centralized, but we also have a huge subcentral public sector. So that's universities, utilities, schools, local government, etc. And it's always been historically quite easy to get central government to do things because we have ministerial power, we have policy, we have governance. It's actually relatively straightforward to regulate ourselves, but when it comes to going much wider, historically it's been quite challenging. So way back when we were looking at how we designed our program, we recognized that we would need some quite strong legislative hooks to bring everyone with us on this journey. So if we asked for voluntary disclosure, we knew that we wouldn't quite get what it was that we needed for the whole of the public sector. So that was quite a deliberate decision, but has made our jobs and my job a little bit harder because we've gone so broad over that spend. So if you skip on. And the next one. Perfect. And the next one. Yeah, great. Our key objectives around procurement reform, it was an opportunity obviously afforded to us following leaving the EU. The EU regulations were in place and being used, but there are some elements of it which are written with the sort of single market in mind. So this was an opportunity to just look at how we buy things in the UK and make sure that we were delivering for the country. So our four key goals were: we wanted to make it more flexible. We have, and I'm sure everyone has this similar challenge, where procurement teams can be a bit too risk averse. They hide behind the regulations. We wanted to open that up, and we wanted to make it really clear that if you are buying something which is dependent on a competitive marketplace, then the marketplace should have a say in how that procurement is being designed. So this is very much contracting for outcomes, looking at where the competitive tension lies across different markets. It's a change in mindset, and I'll come on to a bit more about the behavioural changes in a second. We also wanted to encourage small businesses, really important for economic growth. We've long been a proponent that if a small business can win a public sector contract, it can change the focus and the future of their business. We're quite good customers in the public sector, and we're quite good payers. So there's definitely a huge amount of opportunity for small businesses to enter into those supply chains. As Edwin said, protecting fraud and collusion and really negative tactics within our supply chains is also important. So we've been very clear as to what constitutes exclusions for suppliers, and for the first time we're taking centralized decisions on which suppliers should be barred from public sector procurement. essentially what that means is if you have got a company who has acted or is posing risk to those supply chains, ourselves as centre of government can take a decision to put them on a debarment list, which, as I'm sure you'll understand, is a very, very big deterrent to some of the behaviours if you're banned from all public sector contracts. And then finally, and I know that this is what people are really interested in on this call, we wanted to embed transparency through the OCDS throughout the whole of the commercial life cycle. Historically, we've not been too bad at publishing tenders in one place, but actually it tends to get published and then you never know quite what happens in the contract in its future life. And it's always quite difficult to track that. So we've gone throughout the whole of the life cycle, starting very early on from procurement pipelines. So what is an authority planning to buy over the next 18 months? How can we make sure that the market has got that information all the way to contract change, making sure that change is measured and published so that contracts aren't increasingly added into and restricting sort of the marketplace dynamics, and also termination. So we've never done this before. So understanding where contracts are actually finished and where they're no longer live is quite difficult. So if you look at the current, plan, we've got millions and millions of contracts, but actually we haven't. So there's no real picture on what that looks like. And our key goal behind all of this is to embed that through one iterative and integrated procurement system. So if you skip on, I've talked a little bit about this. One of the core focus for us was to look at that pre-market engagement and the pipelines, as I've mentioned. And we've only been live on this for 6 months, but that is one area where there has been demonstrable increases in how procurement teams are working in that pre-market engagement stage. So I will share a couple of links with some examples, but we're very much seeing a focus on that pre-market stage, which is absolutely fantastic. If you click on to the next slide, maybe the next one, and I'll focus on the central digital platform. What we have done, and we took a decision to do, is our transparency notices and our procurement notices are linked into that life cycle, as I've said. So we've got 17 new notices. Not all of them need to be used for one individual procurement, and that has been a particularly difficult message, obviously, because there is a little bit of an administrative burden which is associated in setting this up. So a lot of the challenge and feedback that I get from heads of procurement across the country is that we've created admin. It's a long-term vision. The admin will be worth it once we've got everything integrated into the system. So the buyers will have those 17 notices, which give various different bits of information around what the procurement does and how it functions. And everything is integrated on what we're calling the central digital platform. So if you click on to the next slide, there's 3 key bits. So the procurement notices are designed to provide the marketplace with level of information around what is being bought, and that goes from pipelines all the way through to termination, as I've said. But we also want suppliers to be able to sign up onto the system and provide their information once. And that includes information such as whether they've been excluded from previous contracts, who their ultimate beneficial owners are, and how the supplier is structured. Each one of those entities has now got a unique identifier. So contracting authorities in the UK, 3,000 of them, have all got a unique identifier, and suppliers who are supplying to the public sector have got that unique identifier. And each procurement opportunity, when it started right at the beginning from pipeline, has got that unique identifier. So having those 3 unique identifiers essentially means that we can track spend and contract activity with contracting authorities and suppliers throughout the whole of the life cycle. Now, this is huge, and it's a really important baseline for starting to gather a lot of that data, which will sit in this big data platform behind the front end of the system. What we have also done is we've created a mechanism whereby suppliers only have to enter their details once in the system, and they can then generate a share code and share that across multiple customers. We get quite a lot of criticism that each individual contracting authority has got a different system with different requirements and different standards, etc. And it just makes it quite difficult and bureaucratic to deal with the public sector. So this is a way of centralizing all of that. So small businesses should have a standardized approach to actually providing that information. Now, it's early days, but what this does mean is that we are now starting to see trends and patterns using the data that sits behind it, and we can actually start using some AI tools, etc., to look at where we are slightly concerned about some of those markets. If you skip on to the next one. So I would try and do a live demo, but the last time I did it, it didn't go very well because of the sort of connection. But I'll share the link, and I'd be really grateful if you wanted to have a quick look as to how we've structured it. We've got a little bit of work to do. The one bit that is missing is that at the moment we can't download any of the data. So if you are a new supplier to government, you can go on, you can search against your requirements. Say, for example, if you're a construction SME in the northwest of England, I can find all of my opportunities from different customers in one place. And then as a supplier, I can follow those opportunities. And this wasn't allowable previously. It was just individual notices that were published. So allowing this throughout the commercial life cycle means that that supplier can be fully engaged in what that looks like. Our vision is that as soon as we can download that data, we will have a data platform which sits behind the central digital platform and can be bespoked by different contracting authorities. And we also plan to publish a number of dashboards and reports which show how procurement is operating on a grand scale. So this is really important, and that's our plan for this year and our vision for 2026. So we're at the beginning of our journey. If you click onto the next slide, I'll just make a couple of recommendations and reflections. This is long-term change, and it has been quite difficult selling this as long-term change. I think, as I've mentioned, commercial teams are slightly wary around over-providing information, and this requires quite a lot of behavioural change in what they're doing. So we have coupled all of this legislative change with quite an extensive learning and development programme. We've put a lot of investment into it, and we've had 16,000 procurement professionals from across the UK do that e-learning and come on the journey with us to understand the benefits, to understand the changes, and understand what they need to do to interact with the regulations. That's been really important because that's helped us create this clear narrative around the long-term benefits. We've also been really clear with suppliers what this means, so it's a huge benefit for SMEs. We've taken the opportunity to use this as a bit of a catalyst to break down some of the myths that we face where people are dealing with public sector. And we have absolutely created that moment for procurement. I know that procurement sometimes is seen as quite a technical enabling function, but we've used this opportunity to bring it much more into a strategic space where procurement can actually deliver against some of the policy goals that we want as a country. And we've also had quite strong political support. So open and transparent contracting is definitely a cross-party political goal to be able to visualize that data. And we're building on some challenges that we've had previously in the context of COVID-19 contracts, for example, whereby that transparency definitely led to some challenges on how procurement was perceived. So my recommendations on this are go bold with the legislation. So if you're going to create a stick, then absolutely the legislative approach is what's required, and we are quite confident that we've done that. However, the behavioural change, the challenging in how commercial teams operate, the working with the marketplace and creating that ecosystem for change has equally been quite important, and we are starting to see the fruits of the labour as we're seeing more things happening kind of pre-market engagement. I'll pause there because I'm at time, but I'm happy to take any follow-on questions, and I'm also happy to share the slides. I don't know if that's something that you wanted to do, George, but happy to
Yes.
share that so people have got visibility.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, and glad that we can share the slides. I'm sure that they're really interesting. I really appreciate your reflections and recommendations for the others going through similar processes. I had two quick questions. One from the chat already, and one just on like how the first one is a little bit, obviously, you've set up that stake. How are you going to measure the impact of the reforms, and how are you going to track that? So if you could share a brief reflection on that. And the other question is, and I think you've sort of answered it in the slides as well, but just to confirm, there was a question from Timo Rantanen from Finland about whether the UK is linking electronic invoices to tendering procedures or termination notices.
Yes, so I'll take the one first, and then I'll talk about benefits. So we have a requirement which is not yet live, whereby contracting authorities will need to upload payment invoice data. The problem is that obviously everyone has got a different system, so we just need to make sure that the identifier, the procurement contract identifier, is on that invoice data, and then we'll be providing a bulk upload for people to be able to do that, and it will sit in the background against each of the individual contracts. So it's not directly linked into the finance systems, although that is a long-term goal. But what we will provide is a way of taking it out of the finance system and then putting it into the CDP. So my vision in this time next year, if I'm still talking about this, we'll be able to have that picture of what is actually being spent under the contract. This is a key issue about measuring estimated value versus actual spend, and a lot of contracts exceed that estimated value quite a lot. So this is very important for us. And then just on your question on benefits, we've got quite a good sort of program benefits approach. And this is looking at things like, have cycle times actually decreased? Have we increased bidding opportunities for SMEs? How are people using new procedures and more competition? And I think Christopher has linked to some initial findings that OCP have done, which is great, and there's a great picture of how the data is developing. The transparency dashboards are where I think I really want to demonstrate these benefits, and those are work in progress. So lots of ideas. A lot of it is anecdotal as well, and there is also obviously a people side of this as well. So by publishing lots of things in the public domain, it helps people's jobs. So a couple of my sort of favorite anecdotal stories are simply about somebody from a local authority who was about to go out to market for something, had a look at what was on the system, realized their neighboring council was about to go out and buy the same thing. Does it really make sense for us to go out and buy the same thing at the same time? Probably not. So let's combine and let's leverage that spend, and let's have that sort of collaboration that sits behind a lot of the procurement.
Amazing. And I think, from our perspective, when we deal with, this abstract theme, we love these anecdotes because they really show how much it matters. And, we can see where there's one good example, there will be others. So very excited to hear that. Let's jump back to Uganda. And I have with us Doreen Kiasemulema with us. And, Uganda has been doing some really fascinating reforms and really leading the way, particularly in Africa, and like what can be done with public procurement and how you can open it up through open contracting approaches. And I think, there are two really interesting experiences that we'd love to hear about. Doreen, one, women-owned and led businesses in Uganda and in fact everywhere in the world really receive just a small amount of government contracts. Can you share with us how you're using open contracting strategies to implement systemic reforms that are changing that?
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. So like you said, for years, women-led businesses in Uganda have been locked out of public procurement opportunities, despite, of course, government procurement accounting for a significant share of the national budget. And the 1% is picked from research that was done by African Freedom for Information Center. And in that research, that's why it was determined that women received only 1% of public contracts, which highlighted a significant gap in their access to public spending. And this was also largely due to government's limited disclosure of procurement opportunities. This restricted women participation. And we also, the percentage was also driven by very weak legal support, the limited technical capacity to engage, and then restricted access to financing. That was one of the issues that was raised in that research. And of course, on government's side, the absence of gender disaggregated data on women-led businesses, this hindered government from being able to make any evidence-based decision-making, and it limited efforts to promote gender-inclusive procurement. So as part of the open contracting strategies, of course, the first thing that government worked towards was transparency and data disclosure. We, of course, the electronic government procurement was implemented. And with this system, this system has actually transformed public procurement. It has automated the processes, streamlining interactions between government and businesses. And so we've also seen enhanced access and inclusion of marginalized groups, which here also include women-owned businesses. And as a result, because of this system, we're seeing a fairer and more competitive environment where women entrepreneurs can participate and even participate effectively in public procurement. In addition to the electronic government procurement, we also have a portal, the government procurement portal. It's a web-based platform. And with this, we require that the procuring entities publish procurement plans and all other information related to contracts or projects. So by making this information publicly accessible, we've seen an improvement in transparency and a reduction in informal barriers. And this has enabled these women-owned businesses to identify and also be able to compete for those procurement opportunities. Both these systems are actually aligned to the open contracting data standards. And that means that the data that is from those systems is actually machine-readable. And it has also helped government to be able to make informed decisions from the data that is got from those systems. And this has created fair opportunities for women and those that have women associations, women-owned businesses, and the like. On government side, the systems, we've seen an improvement in disclosure because these systems are able to publish data that is available to all. So with this improvement in disclosure, government has been able to generate gender disaggregated data, allowing, and it has allowed government to track how many women-owned businesses are actually getting contracts. And with that, we've seen government being able to make decisions based on information that is from these systems. And as a result of that, we have also seen policy reform, which is another open contracting strategy. We've had amendments to the PPDA Act, where there are certain provisions that have been included in the law, and these provisions are promoting women participation in public procurement through being able to reserve a certain percentage of contracts strictly for marginalized groups, which are women, youth, and then the persons with disabilities. And the objective, we also had guidelines that were issued, and these guidelines were meant to help the PDEs, to guide the PDEs in the implementation of the provisions in the law. And so from these reforms, we've seen that for each procuring entity, they have to reserve up to 15% of their total procurement plan for the marginalized groups, which include women, youth, and the persons with disabilities. But we also saw the permission for the use of bid securing declaration forms instead of bid security. And that is helping women be able to deal with issues of financing, access to financing. I mean, all you have to do is provide a bid securing form. And then we also waived bidding fees for these groups. And this has also helped improve the participation. And the other open contracting strategy that government is using is citizen engagement. How is government has recognized that being able to engage citizens can help improve the participation, but also get citizens involved in what is going on around them. We have, under citizen engagement, we have, for example, during the planning processes, we have budget consultative meetings. And these meetings create a platform for women and other groups too, but especially for women, to contribute to shaping government priorities. And we also see when the women are able to contribute, we see that they're able to influence the budget decisions that impact their participation in public procurement, and also to advocate for the gender-responsive policies and address any barriers that they have in doing business with government. We also have, I'll later in detail talk about the contract monitoring system, but we also have women monitors using the contract monitoring system. This system is specifically helping to improve transparency and accountability in public procurement, because it's enabling real-time tracking of contract implementation. So when we have women monitors involved, or women being part of the monitors who are taking interest in projects that are being implemented around them, we are seeing that the women are able to raise any concerns around gender-specific challenges. For example, if there are unfair evaluations, limited information access, maybe weak legal and policy support or technical capacity issues, the ladies can actually identify these issues and ensure that they get addressed. Their participation with this system is actually building trust with women-owned businesses, because it's encouraging greater engagement in procurement. And I think it's a beautiful thing to see women raise their concerns, and these concerns are actually acknowledged and then acted upon through a formal and transparent process. As part of citizen engagement, PPDA and the African Freedom for Information Center also won a grant under the LIFT project. This grant was given by the Open Contracting Partnership. And under this grant, efforts were made to increase the participation, the inclusion of women-owned businesses in public procurement. This project focused on addressing barriers to participation for women, promoting transparency, and then creating opportunities for women entrepreneurs to access and benefit from the government contracts. We brought these women together, we trained them, tried to see how can we assist with them registering to be able to do business with government. We provided the information on the available opportunities, trained them on how to submit responsive bids. And these sessions were good because they created a networking platform for them to collaborate and also share experiences. The last strategy that I'll talk about is collaborating and partnerships. We have cross-sector collaboration between PPDA and other government institutions. For example, the Auditor General's Office, and then the Inspectorate of Government, the IG. So we have collaborating partnership with them. And as we work together, we have seen an improvement in coordination and leveraging of each institution's expertise. This partnership has fostered regular consultations and has actually recently prioritized special interest groups, because PPDA is giving attention to special interest groups, which include women. We have also seen these institutions that we are collaborating with actually give attention to women too. And this has promoted through knowledge sharing, mutual learning, inclusive participation in the public procurement process. When the PPDA developed the CMS, we also saw the Office of the Auditor General, which is another government institution, also introduced the citizen feedback platform. This platform is enhancing accountability through information sharing. Yeah, the women on this platform, having women on this platform also share their concerns or raise whatever issues they come across. It's empowering them because it gives them a direct channel to voice their concerns about service delivery, economic inclusion, and then gender equity in public procurement. Women are using this platform to report barriers, highlight cases of exclusion or malpractice, corruption, and also actively contribute to creating a more transparent and responsive, inclusive procurement system. So those are the strategies that, for now, that government is using to see how to increase women participation in public procurement.
Thank you so much, Doreen. And I think it really highlights how you take it from something that is very abstract to something very concrete and supportive of, some of the companies that we want to be able to participate in procurement system to open up the markets. Very brief follow-up question, as you've mentioned it, on the contract monitoring system, and which works similar to what you just described for the women inclusion as well. Can you tell us more how you're engaging citizens at the monitoring level, and 3 key lessons that you could recommend others thinking about something similar, briefly, please?
Okay, so previously, government was doing contract monitoring, but it was largely manual and paper-based. So a decision was made to digitize the process, and that is how the contract monitoring system was developed. It's a digital platform designed to support effective contract oversight, and with our enabling partners, who in this case are the civil society organizations. They capture and share any contract monitoring issues they have with any relevant stakeholders. This system includes features such as video evidence uploads, photos, and dashboard for structured real-time tracking of contract implementation. To date, PPDA has actually partnered with 30 CSOs nationwide, and PPDA is utilizing their community monitors to serve as their eyes on the ground or their foot soldiers for government projects that are being implemented within their areas of jurisdiction. These community monitors submit their findings via a mobile app to their respective CSO structures, where these findings or issues they raise are actually verified before they are shared with the implementing institution. This issue, if these issues are not addressed with the implementing institutions, the monitors can then escalate those issues to the PPDA. So with this kind of engagements with the CSOs, we are seeing a reduction in contract management issues, such as shoddy works or site abandonments. In our audits and investigations, we are seeing a reduction in some of these issues. We're also seeing greater community ownership of projects, We see that there's a shift of influence from the implementing institutions to the communities themselves. And then we're also seeing fewer delays in project implementation. We're seeing enhanced social accountability and stronger community involvement in oversight, and then increased public trust in procurement processes and contract issues. And when you ask what are some of the lessons?
Yes.
Yes, excuse me. When you ask that, what are some of the lessons would recommend others thinking about implementing something similar? For starters, of course, to get government to start working with civil society wasn't very easy, because you have issues such as potential criticisms, challenging authority, but you look on the other side, and then you see what can we get from citizens actually being engaged in the contract monitoring process. So empowering citizens as trained monitors is actually filling a very critical oversight gap that these implementing institutions often face. And this we have seen is enhancing accountability and service delivery right from the grassroots level. And this approach is demonstrating that meaningful citizen engagement is not just complementary, but it is essential to effective public procurement. It's also a model that can be replicated, of course, by other institutions who seek more transparent and responsive governance. The impact we've seen there is this is leading to detection of contract breaches early on, breaches like maybe delays or poor workmanship. These can be detected earlier on, and then they can be corrected, maybe without recourse to formal litigation. And then the other lesson I can talk about is being able to build the awareness and understanding amongst the local officials or government officials is fostering ownership and cooperation. When the government officials clearly understand or grasp the purpose and the benefits of the monitoring system, they're more likely to support and facilitate and even champion citizen-led oversight. And this in essence, leads to stronger collaboration and more effective implementation. The third lesson that I can talk about is timely and visible government response to citizen feedback is building trust, at least here from our side. When citizens see that their reports actually lead to real action, they're given attention, this is reinforcing, it actually reinforces their belief in public institutions, and also motivates continued engagement in oversight and accountability processes. Here we will see, or we are seeing, it's encouraging continued participation of the citizen, and it's fostering a culture of civic responsibility. And this actually demonstrates how digital tools paired with citizen participation can shape public service delivery.
Thank you so much, Doreen. And I think these insights and these lessons are super critical. And I think we've seen it time and time and again in academic research that just having the opportunity to monitor, for public officials to know that there is monitoring happening, substantially increases efficiency and reduces costs in public procurement. So there are some very good resources there that we can share on our networks. Amazing insights, Doreen. I want to shift to another of the outcomes of open contracting in areas that we're seeing that is increasingly becoming relevant. So we've looked at increasing competition and integrating civil society. Now we will hear from Kęstutis Kasulis from Lithuania, who's a principal advisor for the Public Procurement Agency in Lithuania on sustainability and open contracting, to hear about Lithuania's approach. So in 2020, only 5% of Lithuania's procurement spending by value used green criteria that favor environmentally friendly products and services, or assess for environmental products and services. Kęstutis, you set out to change that with like a really ambitious procurement reform, ensuring that every public procurement decision considers its environmental impact. Can you share the key steps you took and the role data played in this strategy? And let me share my screen with you so that you. Oh no, you'll be sharing it on your own, which is perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so hello everyone. Thanks for having me here. Yes, it was combined effort to change that. So basically, the order came from our government at the time, and they decided that we need during 3 years transformation, we need to reach 100% of green public procurement, because public spending accounts of around 13% of our GDP. And therefore, it should not only serve for the purpose of buying stuff, but it should serve for the wider purpose of making a transition and towards sustainability, reduction of the carbon footprint, and various environmental aspects. So basically, government decided that from 2023, 1st of January, that all public procurements must have included some criteria towards sustainability, except for few objects of purchases. Yeah. I hope it's in. So yeah, of course, that transformation had to have some solid background in terms of calculating how much of percentage we have achieved, because in 2021 was 10%, 2022 was 50%, and then 2023 was 100% of green public procurement. And the government tasked our agency, our office, to monitor this progress and to report it. So in case, because all public procurement in Lithuania was already digitalized from 2010, I believe, all plans and procedures must go through the central public procurement platform, and all the contracts, except sensitive information, must be published for everyone to see. So every winning bid and every contract, even verbal contract, is put on our platform. And that's how it helped us to track the progress. And actually, we created a dashboard where we can see on the left side the progress in terms of percentage in value. And on the right side, we can see the percentage of the procedures, the number of procedures, and it's now in 2025. And we can have a lot of filters, and it's based on, because the contracts are put there, it's open contracts, open data, and everything, every progress we can monitor, and everyone can see it. And this dashboard is also available for publicly available. we can also now improving the tool where we can, because what is green in Lithuania is defined in the Ministry of Environment decree, and each index or each clause, what is green, we are tracking that, someone is like 4.2, it's first type eco label, or Blue Angel, or any first type of eco label. So we see how many times it was used, this criteria, or what different criteria are being used. We also track in which part of the tender documents exactly was used the criteria, how it was made green. So is it in the contract clauses, is it in technical specification, is it the other requirements like for the works ISO 14000 environment, is it in qualification, evaluation, or pre-qualification? Also, we can track individual tender. Basically, in this column, was it a green or no green? So if it's no green, then they have to provide, the contracting authority has to provide the exception clause for not being the green public procurement. So we track what exceptions they used and for what reason. And basically, we can score everyone. It's not only green. Here is the green criteria list, but we have 13 different indexes where we can see from the data which contracting authority underperforms, or who needs some guidance, or where the lack of performance there is, if it needs some training. Actually, during that reform of green public procurement, we indicated that in 2022, education sector and defense sector was quite lacking behind in terms of green public procurement. Then we contacted the ministries and the agencies working under those ministries, and specifically requested what issues they are facing. And then we collected the questions. We done training sessions especially suited for them, and that percentage increased. Also, it helped to create a healthy competition during transition period, because everyone can see, which agency is underperforming, and nobody wants to be, especially if you talk about green, social, responsible public procurement, nobody wants to be lacking behind, and to see how to implement the law, because it's mandatory. So you see, if you also under certain ministry, an agency under certain ministry, you have to deliver the indexes, so then they can contact what is the problem. Also, what else it helped us to do, it's to improve the statistic itself, because then anyone sees the bad numbers in there, they immediately starts looking for the answers. I done green public procurement, why I'm still in the red zone? And we check and say, you are not reporting correctly, so you have to improve your reporting stuff. So then they immediately changed it, and we can see what is going around in the whole country. Basically, it's the short presentation about what we are doing, and in terms of how it helped the digitalized and open contracts, helps us to improve the reforms.
Thank you so much, Kęstutis. And I think it's really one of the most fascinating examples of really datafying, in a way, the and sort of like the incentivization approach, and also like the information itself. Two quick follow-up questions. I'm looking, and I'm adding the one from the chat here as well. One is, obviously, green procurement can mean a lot of things, and I think, as you've gone through the reforms, you've been updating in a way that just having green criteria is not enough to be truly sustainable. So if you could briefly talk about that as well. And you're now also expanding the reforms to consider social procurement as well. And in the first phases, if you have any early insights on sort of like what that entails, to make sure that, from green to social, is what are the lessons that you can take over there. And then there is a question here by Timo Rantanen again on whether there's any additional data that obviously you're publishing to the TED and the EU standard as well. So do you extract this data from tender documents that are not part of TED notices, or do you have any separate reporting requirements for the green procurement information?
Okay, so let me
couple of
begin
questions,
to,
yeah.
to address the first question. Yes, actually, what is happening? Then now a few years ongoing that we have 100% of green public procurement, so everyone is naturally. So, what's the outcome of the green public procurement? What the benefits are for the country, for the government, for the public spending? So yeah, we are currently have few ongoing projects towards having methodology and possibility to have the measurement of the impact. We can't have because it takes long time, because if you take any product and that product has different variations, that means the methodologies has to be different for specific each product to calculate the impact. So we basically start from the scratch, and we're doing the first steps in order to understand few product groups, how it works, and our ultimate goal is to have like emission the notification next to our dashboard, okay, while spending wisely, or how to say that the government has reduced that carbon footprint by such and such during specific contracts throughout that and that contract. So basically, second thing, what we want to do is, like, everyone now is trading in the carbon market, and if we want to know, actually, we have public procurement, and we say, okay, this product costs, because those claims that every green product is always more expensive. So we have to be aware, if we want to use something responsibly. So we have to calculate what does it cost to produce in terms of the impact to the environment. It means if we are producing something which emits a lot of CO2, we have to pay for that CO2 in the market cost. So if we add that creation of CO2 in the market, which is around now 70 euros per kilo, and we add to the lowest bidder, maybe it will change, and we will see that the green way of to produce something is less expensive than regular products. Second question, yes, about the social. Yes, we done that monitoring part of the transition of the green procurement. It's, so to say, quite challenging also for contracting authorities and for the economic operators to respond for the criteria. And we somehow decided that we want to make social responsible public procurement as a voluntary option, and not so in such wide perspective you can add social responsible criteria. But still, we have a problem in the country. Government spends money, so why not to spend wisely addressing the social problems? So also we created the guidelines with the 13 different entities working in and agencies. And then we used as well open contracting ship partnership lift accelerator to push that reform. And we also created, according to our guidelines, we have specific criteria, and we created the monitoring tool, like I showed previously in terms of green public procurement. Now we monitor also social responsible public procurement in terms of our guidelines, requirements, and criteria. And it was done 2 years ago. Now we are trying to improve those criteria, remove that it's not possible to use. And ultimately, also, it is wish or vision, which are currently now under development. We want to see what impact we may do for economy. For example, if you employ for a public contract the person which is unemployed, so instead of giving him support, we employ them to create a GDP. So it's actually, we want to see how the social criteria make an impact on Lithuania's economy. and addressing the third question, which is not if you can repeat, please, the third one.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's in the webinar chat as well. And the question is, I'll read it. As Lithuania's publishing contract and contract award notices using EU standard sort of through TED, do you extract this data from the tender documents that are not part of TED notices? I guess the environmental data, or do you have separate reporting requirements?
It's actually we used to use before the big change. I think it was back in 2022 October or something. Then e-forms appeared, and they are like empty forms. Was it the environment tender, yes or no? So obviously it's not enough for us. We want to know exactly specifics, especially, for example, I don't know why in Europe widely we have European eco-labels and like standards, EMAS and something, so which Commission created as a perfect tools. So I think that at least at that level, we have to collect data, which country uses in which sector, CPV codes, we can link them, etc. But it's not up yet there. So I hope in the following years, someone will change. But for now, we do additional tracking and additional reporting, because contract reporting is, it's worth point that we also do exactly the same application below the threshold. So we track the progress above and below. So we do separate like where we publish our, because that system we were publishing is publishing our contracts. Now from the 1st of January, we also have an invoicing system in Lithuania. So they actually, the database exchanges, and now we are controlling the spending from the first euro, so that it won't be overpaid or overbought the contract. If it's 100 euros, it must stop at 100 euros. So actually the economic operator now can't invoice the contracting authority before the contract is published on our database.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kęstutis. And I think we'll hear from our colleagues at the EU in a moment a little bit about some of the reforms that are ongoing as well. And I think, in the other conversation in the chat, it's always about like balancing the additional effort to procurement agencies in terms of reporting requirements versus the value. And I think your case shows that there is actually a massive value in reporting this kind of information. There were two questions in the chat that I'd like to pose to our panelists. One for Doreen. Could you tell us a little bit more about how CSOs are accessing the information to the projects that they are monitoring? And the second question for Lindsay afterwards. There was a big conversation around beneficial ownership data and how you kind of like test for shell companies and who's behind some of the companies in the procurement process. So maybe I'll give that over to UK to get your insights as well on how you're integrating that into the procurement reform. So those are the two questions. And then we will move on to our European colleagues to go into our special edition for this webinar.
Okay, thank you so much. How do the CSOs access the information? Of course, it's important that the monitors do have at least the primary information on a project so that they understand what they are monitoring. And like we said, the system actually gives real-time monitoring, which is allowing for timely oversight and swift corrective action. So because I mentioned earlier and said that we have the electronic government procurement and then the government procurement portal, and both these systems are actually aligned with the OCGS, they are able to publish information that is quickly accessible. So we train the CSOs to be able to access these systems and be able to see the preliminary information on those projects they are monitoring. This information is published by the PDEs, the procuring and disposing entities. And so we continuously build their capacity. How can they access this information? But at least those two sources are some of our swift electronic systems where they can access information. We also encourage because after they monitor, their first line of engagement is with the implementing institution before they come to us. So we do talk to the implementing institutions and tell them that these CSOs, these monitors are working on our behalf. And then we also train them on the system and show them the benefits of having foot soldiers or eyes on the ground. And so we encourage a good working relationship, rapport between the monitors and the implementing institutions. That way they're able to request for some of the information that is supposed to be public information. In case they can't access it on the systems, they can walk into these offices and get that information in addition to the electronic systems.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Yeah, this is really helpful. Lindsay, can I hand it over to you for a final comment on around beneficial ownership and how you're managing that within the new system?
Yeah, sure. So this is still work in progress. We absolutely haven't solved this completely, but our plan is that as everything is integrated into one unique supplier identifier, when they go to put their sort of statement of truth in for the procurements, it links to both their company's house identifier and also lists persons with significant control. And if they are sort of false declaring that, then that's a sort of a problem down the line, and that does actually constitute a breach of what they would be bidding against. The one challenge that we've got and that we're working through is to how to get that live validation of the ultimate owner and the ultimate control. So there's various different options that we're looking at. We do quite a lot of this for grant funding at the moment, and we have a grant system which is called Spotlight, which goes a bit deeper than what we do for procurement. So we're looking at options around validation and integrating that so there is a live assessment of those ultimate control, and that uses data such as the open ownership BODS data and also what's already kind of available via external legislation. It's just a bit tricky to get that overall sort of validation, but I'm hoping in a couple of years we'll be able to link it in much better in terms of that integrated state. I'm open to ideas basically as well, so if anyone's got any ideas then let me know.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Handing it over to Chris now to dive deep in for the last 20 minutes of this webinar into the European Union as a major block on public procurement.
Thank you very much, George. And I do want to note that we have Joshua Schwartz, who's one of my colleagues from GW, had a comment in the chat. I just want to highlight it as we go into the European experience. This has been a fascinating session, and Doreen, for example, you've really helped us rethink what it is that we're seeking from public procurement. Our colleague Steve Schooner wrote an article in 2002 called The Desiderata, the basic things that we seek in a procurement system: transparency, competition, integrity, best value. And Doreen, you gave some really interesting examples of how open contracting essentially turns the procurement system around. And for example, it allows for ready feedback from the community on when things are going wrong on the project. So I really appreciate these new insights. So thank you, Joshua, for your comment. So we're going to turn now to our European edition, as George put it, a special extra session where we're talking about something slightly different, but related to the open contracting that we've been reviewing. We're going to want to dive deeper into work that's happening in the European Union as the European Union reforms the public procurement framework to guide the member states and ensure their efficient, competitive, and accountable government spending. Most importantly, we want to understand how open procurement strategies allow governments to exchange data across borders efficiently. For this, we have Gabriele Rocco, who's our very dear colleague from the University of Turin, and Luca Martinelli, who is the head of the unit of the Publications Office of the European Union. I'm going to turn it over to you, Gabriele, if you could introduce the latest on open procurement in the European Union to lay the foundation for Luca's presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris, and for involving me in this very interesting seminar and workshop. So we wanted to add something, but it's very important to link with what we have already heard and what we discussed this morning, as we had also the Lithuanian colleagues of European Union too, and also UK, that is very interesting to share idea with them, having in mind our next reform of our directives and legislation in the EU. So just to introduce myself from the University of Turin, and at this prize of TED Ambassador. So we will explain in a minute what is TED, Tender Electronic Daily, for who is not aware of this. And Luca Martinelli will go deep in this as he is the head of the unit of the TED in the European Union. So in the next slide, I wanted just to share some ideas to tell you how open contracting principle have been applied in the EU. So also for answering the question on desiderata. The desiderata, I think, won't change, but will be reached and implemented really more effectively through the deep digital transformation that we have to face in public procurement. And that's why a new kind of transparency, much deeper, because is related to many forms of dematerialization that we had just changing paper into PDF document. Now we have to turn to an effective e-procurement, and so e-forms and native digital forms can be interoperable in platforms that collect data and permit a deep analysis of clean data of with defined ontology that permits to really to elaborate this data and gives an image of what happens in the procurement process individually and in all the aggregated form of procurement, of collaborative procurement, as it was shown also in the UK experience of a unique platform. So I think it's really important to see how the use of this platform and interoperable platform will also overcome all the burden of transparency, because in the past it was often this discussion of how transparency require a huge work of charging data, of data entry and so on. Now we can evolve this system through platform that permits to have the data directly open when they have to be open. And that's the efforts of the European Union are in this perspective, starting with the reform of the procurement directive that will implement a very, very strong attitude to this digital transformation. And one final words on what the EU public procurement data space will open data much more widely, and this will be a further discussion maybe in fall winter 2025. Also with the evolution of what was the virtual company dossier, the digital wallet for economic operators, as we saw in the UK, the registration service for suppliers. We wanted to have the supplier entering and applying the once only principle, not recharging data, but having a code for entering any kind of our procedures. So we will discuss this further, and in the next slide I will just conclude with two notices that we wanted to share with you. This series of books we edited with Professor Yukins that are online, open, and we are working on the next book on public contract and digital transformation. So the call for contribution is open, and we really hope that also all around the world the participants to this series can contribute and send us a proposal for chapters on this book, but also for publishing them in open source review as a use publicum network review. So the floor is now comes to Luca, and I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Gabriella. I've been already introduced by both Gabriella and Chris. Just to say, I'm in Luxembourg, so good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's a pleasure receiving this invitation to take part in this amazing global webinar. I've never seen something like that, and it's an honor for me. We are well aware also of the important role of the open contracting partnership to ensure transparency and competition in public procurement worldwide. I would like to share with you some news, I would call them like that, from the European Union concerning open procurement. Next slide, please. So I will touch upon a few aspects. First of all, some words about TED and the official journal of the European Union. What are the already mentioned regulatory changes that have been announced? I would like to mention standardization activities that we are carrying out here at the Publications Office, because they are very important to ensure interoperability, therefore openness. And I will have a set of slides on ways to access and reuse TED data. TED data are not only on TED, as I will show, they flow in different system outlets with different treatments, and this is, I think, quite interesting and probably is an indicator of the value of this data. In conclusion, I will talk a bit about what we are doing in terms of future developments here at the Publications Office. Next, please. So TED, Tender Electronic Daily, this is quite, sounds old, was invented probably 20, 30 years ago in the early times of digital technologies. I like to say, okay, but TED can also mean tendering European data, because more and more we are going into a datification of what was the official journal, of what still is the official journal of the European Union. So there is an obligation in Europe under the EU directives and under the financial regulation for EU institutions to publish in the official journal, in the supplement to the official journal of the EU, all tenders above a specific contract value. This, of course, is to ensure transparency and competition. So at the Publications Office, which is part of the Commission, we oversee the entire life cycle of procurement notices, ensuring their timely and accurate publication in the official journal S. This is currently available as official edition on the TED website. So the TED website is the place where every day, Monday to Friday, we publish the official journal. This is accessible to all users freely in 24 opportunities. TED provides access also to the archive of past notices in all EU languages. TED features a unified search interface that allows users to apply multiple filters such as geographic location, notice type, nature of contract, and keywords in order to find relevant information. I would like to mention among recent updates the fact that we have now e-forms. This has been already mentioned also by Gabriella. E-forms is the standard through which contracting authorities all over Europe submit procurement notices to the official journal for publication. And also I would like to mention the fact that TED website has recently undergone a complete redesign, offering improved user experience and enhanced functionality, with particular attention also to accessibility for the disabled. Next slide, please. Some figures about TED. To our knowledge, this is one of the largest and most open, I dare to say, procurement system in the world, where competition and contract award notices are published. We publish every day, Monday to Friday, 3,000–4,000 notices per day. This originates from tens of thousands contracting authorities, mainly from EU member states, but not exclusively. Consultation of notices, so-called paid views, are also in the order of tens of millions every year. But TED is not the only way to access this valuable information. Next, please. The notices as publications are more and more datified. In the essence, the information we find in TED is who buys what, from whom, and for how much. So the buyer, the contracts, what works, supplies and services are bought, who are the vendors, and what is the value of the contract. I will come back on this because datification, which is a component of digitization, is more evident also when we move to other outlets that go beyond TED. Next slide, please. I would like to mention the revision of the public procurement framework. You know, we have 3 directives from 2014 plus the so-called defense directive from 2009, and the Commission last year, while starting its mandate, announced that all this will be reviewed. This is part of the mission letter of the Executive Vice President Stéphane Séjourné, French, who's in charge of this dossier. And it also follows up some important reports, starting from the conclusion of the Court of Auditors a couple of years ago that indicated ways of reform, and then the so-called Draghi report on EU competitiveness, the latter report on the internal market, and Council conclusion. So where are we with the reform process? My colleague in the Directorate General for Growth for the Internal Market recently launched an evaluation of the current directives. This is now being finalized. There was already a form of public consultation on the evaluation. And we now move into the so-called impact assessment report, and that next year is expected by the end of next year, a Commission proposal that we propose to the EU legislative authority, that is to say the Council and the Parliament. Next slide, please. So what are the directions? What can we say at this stage about how the I would say a concern also based on recent crisis about ensuring the security of supply in some strategic and critical domains. But there is also a strong emphasis on simplification and reduction of the administrative burden. This we've also heard from the UK colleagues. And as I mentioned, the legislative environment is quite complex today, not only the directives, the 4 directives that I mentioned, but there's a lot of sectoral legislation that has introduced procurement provisions, and all this will be consolidated, will be simplified and made more easy to manage. Next slide, please. I mentioned standardization activities as a basis for interoperability and for openness. At the Publications Office, we work on 3 different standards. One is the forms that I already mentioned. We also work at the European Single Procurement Document. This is the standard used by businesses to self-declare their status for suitability in public procurement. And Professor Racca already mentioned that the evolution of this in the future could be linked to the business wallet, the digital business wallet. That is another legislative measure that is being prepared by the Commission. I would like here to mention the 3rd standard, because it's very important for the following services that I will describe, is the so-called e-procurement ontology. So what is the e-procurement ontology? Is a way of describing concepts in a uniform way that will allow then machine readability across time and space. So in a way, the e-procurement ontology is the basis of the so-called semantic web approach. Next slide, please. But let's see a bit more in detail how the TED website and works. The TED website, as I said, is the main and official way of accessing information on public procurement in Europe. But beyond the TED website, we also have API services that allow machine to machine. We have the possibility of bulk download XML files. We have the possibility of going directly to notice downloads. And all this has undergone recently some improvements, but we realized that this was not sufficient. Next slide, please. You're probably aware of the role that Sir Tim Berners-Lee played not only in developing the web, the World Wide Web, but in 2006 he launched, so almost 20 years ago, the open data movement based on the so-called semantic technologies. In order to be open, data must be legally open, so have an open license, be machine readable, use an open format, and use semantic technologies like URIs allowing linked data. With TED, we achieve 3-star services. To go over, we decided to develop a proper open data service for TED. Next slide. So the TED Open Data Service is in a way the third pillar of TED. I already mentioned the TED websites and the TED APIs. With TED Open Data Services, TED data can be linked to the semantic web. It's not only data at level of notice, but TED data can be queried at individual level through very complex search possibilities. Next slide, please. But the semantic web and the ontology, which I mentioned, is also the base of the public procurement data space that was launched last year. Currently, this connects EU-level data, that is to say, TED data, with national data. Currently, they come only from 4 national member states and also Norway. But we are envisaging progression towards more countries, and we are envisaging to cover not only the e-notification phase, but all the phases of public procurement, contracting, payment, and the like. This will be a very complex project, is a complex project that is now seeing its first steps. In particular, next please. PPDS focuses on dashboarding, that is to say, monitoring public procurement market, measuring data quality, and measuring strategic procurement. The next, I'll give a quick example concerning monitoring the market. On the left, you can see how one of the key indicators for monitoring the market, in particular competition indicator, the so-called single bidder, was presented in the previous edition of the yearly report. And on the right, you see how the PPDS dashboard, which is very interactive, it allows maps, it allows filtering, and in a way, this is based on a continuous data flow that originates, as I said, from TED and from member states. Next, please. TED data also flow to the European Data Portal. European Data Portal is an open data catalog, data.europa.eu. And here you can find both a link to TED data, the first screenshot, but you can also find comma-separated values tables that have been processed, and there's a problem of data quality with data. We don't claim that TED data are perfect. And definitely colleagues in DG Grow are able to clean data and put at disposal of the users also these very valuable comma-separated value data sets that is available for use. Next slide. We also created an aggregator page on data.europa.eu that provides links to all the resources that I mentioned before. It's under the data tab on data.europa.eu. And last of these outlets that I mentioned, on the publications office portal, op.europa.eu, we've created a pilot that provides a simplified view of procurement procedures. So linking the different stages of the notices from the competition notice to the result notice. It also applies some AI features. For example, there is an improvement of the CPV code based on AI analysis. And there is also machine translation for parts of the IFO of the fields that are not normally translated. What is going to happen at the publications office in the coming years? We had two milestones for this year. One is already achieved. We've concluded the procurement ontology in terms of development phase, covering all the different phases of public procurement from A to Z. Of course, there will be maintenance. That is also very important. We'll make available all e-forms in the TED Open Data Service by the end of the year. This is not yet the case. And more we work towards, on one side, integrating these different services, for example, PPDS and Open Data Service, but also on standardization activities, which have to work as a single block of standards. And of course, AI use, I already mentioned it for this outlet, but we plan to use AI to validate notices, therefore improving data quality and also to support retrieval. With this, I think I would like to give you some contacts, the TED help desk that you can reach, and we are visible also on X and LinkedIn. Next, please. And as a summary of the resources I mentioned, ted.europa.eu, please visit it. This is more as a site of a for general users, I would call it. If you are a data specialist, you could take advantage of the TED Open Data Service, of the TED Developer Doc, and you could also inscribe in our regular workshop for TED data users. Mailing list, we plan to have a TED Together event at the end of the year. This will be an hybrid event, so also online, open to anyone that is interested. 27th, 28th November, please get there. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this excursion into the EU, and I think really fascinating how the EU has been taking on a lot of these elements from open data, open contracting approaches in sort of like bringing information together, making it open, and using it to really give value back to the different contributors. So with this, I want to close this webinar series over the last 4 sessions. You know, we've traveled the world. We've heard from so many different actors and participants from all different countries, but also different types of participants, civil society organizations, public officials who are doing amazing work and just sort of like trying to improve public procurement, make sure it delivers, make sure it is open and transparent. And I think I want to close with this, which is sort of like a version of our vision at the Open Contracting Partnership, that if imagine a world where the trillions of dollars that are spent on public contracts really better serve people and protect our planet. And I think we have seen over the last 3 sessions, 3-4 sessions, that this is possible, how open contracting contributes to it. And, we've heard from some of the most impressive practitioners who are working on this. So we hope that you can go back, if you haven't listened to the previous sessions, go back and check into those. We've shared them in the chat quite a bit, and we continue this conversation as we move into the next meetings, and I'm sure we hear again. So again, thank you very much to our panelists today, and thank you to our listeners. We will be in touch, and we look forward to continue improving public procurement. Thank you so much.
Thank you, George. Thank you all.
Thank you.